Sometimes it only takes a single moment to change someone's life. A single small thing that changes their views. Boom. Just like that. Everything that had meaning is suddenly nothing more than fading memories. Sometimes it's the good that fades, and sometimes it's the bad. And Mob Psycho is a beautiful story of finding those moments and changing the characters for both the better and the worse. Of finding those moments and hopefully resonating with the viewer in a way that I think few other shows can, let alone anime. Sure, I think it can be said that Mob Psycho has some of the flashiest and coolest fight scenes in anime, but at its core, it's a story of finding acceptance in one's own self, of finding acceptance in those around us that raise us up to be better than we thought we ever could be on our own. I can't help but love a story that is so unapologetically about driving people forward when others work so hard to put them down. And what better way to commemorate that message than to look at the moments I love the most? The moments that define what I think are the greatest strengths of the series. How to find acceptance in the things and people that come to mean the most to us. The first pair I want to talk about is none other than Mob himself and Reagan. Mob's is a special case in which he is a powerful psychic, but lacks the ability and training to control his powers. So in search of a way to control himself, he finds Reagan, a conning, self-interested man just out to make a quick buck. Which is why I find it so amazing that Reagan is able to set aside his own self-interest for this young boy. Of course, he hides how much he cares for Mob behind the facade of using Mob for his own personal gain. That is a part of who he is. But I can't help but feel like that fades more into the background the longer he spends around Mob. That of course is marred when the Spirits and Such consultation begins to become more popular, and suddenly experiences a huge influx in business. For a brief time, Reagan begins to see Mob as little more than a vehicle for that success, and for the first time in his life, Mob puts his own personal happiness before Reagan. Honestly, this felt like it was only a matter of time before Mob had to become his own impetus for growing, instead of just relying on Reagan. And it's also indicative of the growing up that Reagan himself needs to go through. There's a nice duality between the two of them, one needing to grow less naive and more skeptical of the world and the intentions of others, and one needing to learn that his skepticism and narcissism have kept him from truly trusting or being honest with anyone. So when they are finally reunited after the TV broadcast, I feel like there's a nice feeling of release when Reagan finally admits to Mob that he isn't a master esper. Mob tells him that he always knew and that he didn't really care. It was their connection that kept Mob around for all that time, and it was only Reagan's selfish nature finally getting the better of him that finally drove Mob to become more self-reliant. He stayed with Reagan because of the tenet that spoke most deeply to him, that psychic powers don't intrinsically make you better than anyone else, just different and unique in their own special way. Because Reagan is able to accept what Mob is and treats him like any other person instead of just a pseudo-magical being, Mob does the same for Reagan, despite all the flaws that both of them possess. They come together to make each other better in the ways that they each needed, and don't merely disregard the other's flaws, but find ways to accept each other for who they uniquely are. Flaws and all. The next character moment is between Mob and Emmy. Okay, if you don't think this was one of the most beautiful scenes from 2019, we clearly didn't watch the same show. Emmy is a girl who spent most of her time trying to appease those around her and denying herself what she knew to be true to herself. She is a writer and a deeply passionate one at that, but her friends were less than enthusiastic in her pursuit of the written word. I can honestly relate to this. There have been times where I've felt like my own writing was ignored or outright bashed with little to no reason behind it. It's kind of soul-crushing to pour your heart into something and then to have those who were closest to you dismiss it. The thoughts of, you aren't good enough, no one cares, or do something useful with your life. An imposed image of what is expected being born from what others tell you is acceptable. To feel trapped by those expectations and have nowhere to turn for comfort, or the validation that we all so desperately seek. Sorry, the point wasn't to get dark, but I couldn't get to the light without exploring the dark a little. And for Emmy, Mob becomes that light in the darkness. In a rare show of his power, Mob returns the pages to their original place, reattaching them with his psychic powers. How exactly that stayed in that shape afterwards is anyone's guess, but it's what it symbolizes that matters. By putting himself out there for her, he shows that if no one else, he will stand by her side and cheer her forward. Also, I kind of ship them, so there's that. And the final is possibly my favorite of the three, Mob and the Body Improvement Club. Fitness has always been a sticking point for me. Weight is something I struggled with in middle school, and I was often made fun of for it. And when I finally did begin to work on it, it was the very same people telling me to give up, that I wouldn't make a difference with my efforts. Now, I wouldn't consider myself a particularly driven person when it comes to my looks or weight, but I am spiteful at times. And hearing something like that pushed me to try harder, and finally I did lose the weight. I won't lie, it was nice to stick it to them. But with Mob, there isn't that same derision from the Body Improvement Club. They welcome him immediately. It isn't a point of belittling him for his deficits, but raising him up for what he is trying to change for himself for the better. Sure, they push him beyond his comfort zone, but it's always done as a means to better him, to help him strive for a healthier lifestyle, and not because they want to haze him or make him feel lesser for his inability to grasp the success that they have achieved. It's this open-handed kindness that helps further define the person Mob wants to be, not only for himself, but for those he encounters in his everyday life. To be generous and patient with those who want to better themselves, to accept them for their flaws and all, to learn to realize that it is impossible to do everything on your own. Sometimes you need that extra push, even if you didn't know that was what you needed at the time. They truly embody the message of Mob Psycho, especially the president of the club, Musashi Goda, and I can think of no other moment that truly shows the depth he is willing to go to for Mob in defending him than his fight with Shibata. Shibata is a psychic that used most of his abilities to enhance his physicality to monstrous levels, and uses that to crush his enemies. Even the Body Improvement Club is easily outmatched by his overwhelming power. But just as Shibata is about to kill Mob, Goda saves the day, along with a little help from Temple. And it honestly comes down to one part in particular that makes me love his character. To so deeply believe in what Mob is struggling toward, he even puts his life on the line to protect that conviction. He recognizes Mob's weaknesses and doesn't care about them, only that he truly wishes to better himself. Oh man, Goda really is Gota. Acceptance is a hard thing to find, and it's important to recognize the many different ways to find it. From within yourself, giving more than you thought possible and then pushing toward your own dreams even further beyond. For others, to bring them to a place to find themselves and their own acceptance even if others don't believe in them. And with others together, bonding through the trials and tribulations that we find ourselves in, whether that be self-made or presented to us from the outside world. Acceptance is to have the strength to be you. The strength to see others as they deserve to be seen. The strength to accept our weaknesses and realize we are stronger together than we ever could be apart. Hey you, person who made it to the end of the video, would you kindly consider subscribing and sharing the video? It would mean a lot to me. I've got some big things planned, so to get in on it, come over and follow me on Twitter or join my Discord server. And with that, have a great day, my dudes.